Let me say a bit more about this term counts as. It's a term we use a lot, right? It basically means that one thing is considered an example or an instance of something else. Right? For example, suppose you're at some kind of meeting and they ask for a vote, right? And they ask for everyone that wants to vote yes to raise their hand, and you raise your hand. Now suppose someone doesn't like the way you voted and they're mad at you and they come up later and say, how could you possibly vote yes on that? And you say, what are you talking about? I didn't vote yes. And they say, yes, you did. And you say, I never said yes. I never said I vote. I never punched a voting card. I just raised my hand. Well, what they're going to say is, but in that situation, raising your hand counts as voting. When I think of this, I think about a field trip I went on when I was in elementary school. We went down to the courthouse to see a naturalization ceremony. That's when people who are not U.S. citizens take an oath to become U.S. citizens. One of the people there was a girl who seemed to be about 1, maybe 2 years old. Right? She was being adopted by her parents. Right? And she was going to become an American citizen. Now, when the judge had everyone go around and say who they were, right, the parents introduced her and she shouted, "No way," real loud. Right? Now, when it came time, a little later in the ceremony, the judge said, all right, does anyone want to decide now that they do not want to become a U.S. citizen? If you do so, say so. Except for the little girl who said no way. The court will not accept that as an answer. Right? In other words, that little girl saying no way did not count as a refusal because it seemed just like a phrase that she liked to use. So that's an example where the judge said, in this circumstance, something that would normally be a denial, right, or a refusal, does not count as that, right, because of the special circumstances. When we're dealing with morality and law, right, especially when we're dealing with principles, sometimes we spell out that certain things do or don't count as something else, especially things that in ordinary use of language would fall into that category. For example, suppose that there's a school policy, right, that allows for you to miss class due to a religious holiday. Right? Now, the policy might spell out something like very minor holidays or holidays that repeat every week or some other thing do not count as religious holidays for the purpose of this rule. Now, they're not saying that they aren't technically religious holidays. Right? They're not making any claim about that. They're just saying, look, when we establish this rule involving this category, we don't mean to include those things in this category. So we'll say that for the purposes of applying this rule, these things do or do not count as instances of the category or members of the category. Why do I mention this? Well, we may have some basic notions of what harm is or interference, etc. But what we're really interested in is, for the purposes of applying this principle, what counts as harm, interference, society, etc. So it may be the case that there's certain things we would generally regard as an action by society, right? But we agree that for the purposes of applying this principle, that's not what we mean. Right? Now, rather than invent some new term, the bleep instead of society, right? Or schmociety or something like that, we just use the common word society, which more or less tracks what we're talking about, but then we try to spell out more carefully, right, when something does or doesn't count as society interfering.